Hey guys, welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am the Grumpster himself, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging. Today we're going to talk about sound check etiquette. It's a subject that I've talked about many times before in the past, but we got a bunch of new people here to the channel and following my content that are asking me to speak about this again and do a new fresh video on this. So we're going to do that today, as well as talk to concert and event promoters, probably kind of like in the vein of outdoor street festivals, multi-band events, that sort of thing. And we're going to try to give them some tips on how they can do their events better and get the band schedule moving a lot more fluid and that sort of thing. So bands don't walk away saying, man, I don't want to go back to that place. It was a chaotic mess. We never want that to be the impression we leave, even on the artists. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, JR here. I wanted to talk to you for a quick second. If I could just have your attention for like 90 seconds, please. Can you please consider subscribing to the channel? Like 47% of you guys watching right now have not even hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can follow this content. And many of you are coming back week after week. Hey, look, it's okay. I do the same thing sometimes. Sometimes I am so into what a channel is posting that I forget, hey, I need to support them with my subscription. So I will hit that subscription thing. Also, if you really super dig what I'm doing here with the Grumpy Sound Guy content, please think about becoming a paid member and becoming one of the Grumpy Sound Guy Insiders. We have a wonderful group of industry professionals over there now that are answering questions and helping people get from A to B, giving recommendations on gear. I myself am in all those conversations. When I know you're an insider, I give you preferential treatment, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely worth the price of a cup of coffee fee that it is every month to just get in there and become part of a group of guys that respectfully know how to communicate with the guys that really just need to ask some elementary level questions, I always say it's a safe place to ask dumb questions. Look, I don't know everything. Sometimes I'll get on there and post something like, hey, what do you guys know about this? What do you guys know about that? It's so different from the forums where you're ridiculed and made fun of many times. I do not tolerate that with the Grumpy Insiders. These guys are really just there trying to connect, trying to have community, and to try to do the right thing and helping everybody get to where they need to be in the business. I love you guys. Stick around for the rest of the content. Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back. So, sound check etiquette. Let's just dive right in here. I guess the biggest thing that I would really want to bring to the table about this, because you talk to any sound guy that's been doing sound for more than 35 seconds, and they're going to tell you they have been through some crazy stuff when it comes to trying to get sound check done in an intelligent, fluid manner. What I always tell bands is everyone needs to be on stage. You need to have your ears in or, at your monitor, wedge, and that sort of thing in your position, and then allow me to guide us through sound check. The way that's probably going to go in most cases is we're going to start with drums, kick, snare, hat, racks, overheads. If there's a drum processor, an electronic drum pad, we're probably going to go through that at that time. Then we move to bass guitar, then to the electric guitars, acoustic guitar, keyboards, if there's a horn section, and then finally vocals. If your sound guy is running monitors from front of house, what I typically do is rough in those monitors before anybody shows up. I'm really good at getting those fairly close right out of the gate. But what I ask from the band is, let me get front of house set so I can get the gain structure in its correct place first. And then after we go through everything, we'll come back through everything a second time, and we will ask each person one at a time what it is they want in their ear mix or in their wedge mix. And if I can get a band that will submit to that and not be noodling around on their guitar or the keyboard while I'm trying to get drum sounds, correct, then we can have a sound check that will probably be done in 5 or 10 minutes, because that's about all the time we get in the club scene. If I'm at an outdoor show or something like that, I may get 30 minutes or so. If it's a national, it may be a 2-hour sound check. It just all depends. Most of the time in the middle market, we're kind of doing combat audio. Throw it up, get it going, make it loud, get it off, load it back up in the truck and go home. That's what we call combat audio. So in that scenario, we're really just trying to get a line check done, make sure the kick is in the kick channel, the bass is in the bass guitar channel, lead vocals in the lead vocal channel, and we may rough in some of that stuff, but we really won't sculpt the mix until the band starts playing as a whole. If we have an opportunity to get the band to play through at least intro, verse, and chorus of something, that goes a long way in starting to sculpt it into where we want it at front of house. Most of the time, we don't really get that kind of privilege, especially in clubs. So what we do is we just do a line check, kind of sort of rough it in, and then we get it dialed in, and we really start sculpting it in the first 2 or 3 songs or something like that. Some guys tend to want to validate themselves by how fast they can get from point A to point B. I used to be that guy when I was young. Like, I remember drinking my first beer too, but I like to take my time and not rush through the process just for my own ego-centric kind of, bull butter. I want to make sure that I'm producing a high quality mix for the band, not some welfare government surplus mix. You know what I'm saying? So I like to give it, 2 or 3 songs, something like that. Especially if there's multiple singers in the band. If that's the case, it may be the whole first set before I'm really super happy with it, because it may take that whole set just to get everybody in the band singing lead on a song. Many times a band will open up and the guy in the middle of the stage will open up with the first 3 or 4 songs in that first 3 or 4 song block. And then as the set progresses, they start bringing in some of the other singers to sing lead as well. So it can take a minute sometimes, and I like to take my time with that, I usually have it at about 85 or 90% by the end of the first song, halfway through the second song. But it's really that last, 10 or 15% or whatever, that is really the icing on the cake and really gets it to where I want it to be. So don't freak out. Like, I've had guys come to me after sound check and their buddy was in the audience, especially if it's a band I've never worked with before and they don't know me necessarily, because that does still happen to me. They'll have a guitar player buddy in the audience or something that'll come up after a line check in a club that's full of a dinner crowd, by the way. So all we get is a line check, usually 10 minutes before the band starts. And he's like, man, the guitar wasn't near as loud. He goes to his guitar player buddy and says that. The guitar player comes to me and is giving me chin music about it. And it's like, look, dude, this was a line check, okay? I will sculpt the mix in the first couple songs. Calm your tits, Dorothy. Everything's going to be fine, all right? Just trust me. And I know that can be a little challenging for a new band that's not worked with me before or doesn't really understand the level of skill that we bring to the table. Usually by the end of the first set, they got a pretty good picture of what that looks like and everything is okay. But we got to navigate all those things, and it starts with a healthy sound check. The biggest mistakes I see bands making, and this just makes me want to run someone over with a push mower, is somebody disappears. It's like, okay, let's do sound check, and they'll get up, and the drummer will go through the drums, and then as soon as we're done with the drums, he disappears. And then it's like, okay, well, when we come back around for round 2 to dial monitors in, he's nowhere to be found. And it's like, we need him for, monitor check as well as front of house check. Sometimes we got to stand there for 10 minutes waiting for the guy to come back from the bathroom, or went outside to smoke a cigarette, or he's talking to his girlfriend on the phone outside, or we went to go lay down in the bus, or something like that. It's like, no, dude, sound check is not over until I say it's over. I need you to stay in your position and be patient, because that same guy will come back, and then 30 seconds into the first song, he'll be waving his arms like he's having an epileptic seizure on stage about how his monitor mix is horrible. And I'll be like, well, yeah, sure, because you disappeared when we were setting up the monitor mix. Sometimes you just can't fix stupid. You know what I'm saying? That's probably the biggest issue that I see that happens. Guys just want to plow through sound check super quick. Now, look, if it's a band that I work with all the time and we have a saved mix, or they're running their own ear mix from their own mixer on stage, then you can do that. You can do that. I'll figure it out. I have done shows where I got no line check, no sound check, no nothing, because the event promoters didn't give us enough time between bands to do, a correct changeover, which we're about to talk about here in just a minute. So sometimes it's just throw and go, baby. Combat audio. We're going to make it work, and I'm going to dial it in the first song or two, and get it where it needs to be. Thankfully, I'm pretty good at that. I've been doing this a very long time. I've been in that situation more times than I can count. But at the very least, even in a multi-band setting, I'd at least want to do a line check on new instruments on stage. Some of the middle market events that I do, we will either provide backline, or they will hire a backline company to come out and provide, like drums, bass guitar, amp, sometimes guitar amps. Usually they don't do guitar amps much anymore because every guitar player is kind of finicky about what they want to use. So drums and bass amp usually gets it done. In some scenarios where we're mixing nationals and they're flying in, everything might be provided. All the way down to microphones. Everything was on a specific, list that they provided to us ahead of time, hopefully. And we can have all those things in place down to what kind of keyboards they want to use, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. In those scenarios where backline is provided, where you're only switching out guitar players and singers, basically, you can do a changeover in 20 minutes, I always tell event promoters, give us at least 30 minutes between bands to get the old band off and the new band on. And that kind of gives us some play room for the bands that always play over their set list. If you're a band in that scenario, please don't play over your set list, because you're basically screwing the next band, because you're every minute that you go over your time slot, you're taking a minute away from them to set up and get comfortable on stage. I've seen that go to an extreme to where the following band had to cut a song out of their set list. They're never happy about that, okay? Let me just let you in on that, okay? But other sound check mistakes. Vocalists. When I ask you to sing into the mic or to check your mic, don't yell and scream into the mic, and then when you go to sing a song, you whisper. If that's the case, then sound check was absolutely useless and a waste of our time. I usually ask people to sing for me into the mic, and then we'll get an idea of what they want to do. So many times they go up to the mic and they go, hey, check 1, 2, hey, and they're yelling and shit in the mic, and it's like, come on, dude, like, I know you don't sing that loud, Every now and then you'll get one that will. Every now and then you'll get a female, like especially the R&B singers, who will come up and test their mic all whispering, just the opposite. They'll be whispering and, barely talking into the mic. And then when they go to sing, they sound like Aretha Franklin, and it's like, wow, man, can you give us the real volume? Can you just be honest with us and give us the real volume you're going to play while you're performing? Because that's what we need at soundcheck. Same thing with guitar players and keyboard players, leveling out their patches. There's nothing worse than having your sound guy chase your guitar and your keyboard patches around all night when he really should be focused on vocals. The reason for that is I've gotten some pushback on that statement from musicians that say, oh, you're just a lazy sound guy and you don't want to, have to manage more than one thing at a time. No, that's not the case at all. I'll work with whatever you throw at me and probably make it really good. But the audience notices the vocals before they notice anything else musically. So wouldn't you want your sound guy focused on getting vocal blends right, getting the backing blends right, getting the lead vocal up over, the mix where it needs to be, and flying vocal effects in and out all night, than chasing your keyboard or your guitar patches around because you're too stupid to know how to level those things out? And let me give you a word of advice about that. A lot of keyboard players will say, well, man, I have them all cranked up to 10. Okay, well, here's where you have to have at least 3 brain cells in your head, not all fighting for third place. You have to understand that a horn sound, just by the nature of its sound, has a lot more mid-range that cuts over than what an electric piano sound would be. Same thing with synth sounds that are big and fat and mid-rangey and all that kind of, like they were naturally be louder than, say, strings or something like that. The way you solve this is you plug your keyboard into a little powered speaker or something at home. You can download an SPL app on your cell phone for free. You set it on your knee while you play in front of the amp, or set it on a chair in front of the amp, and you go through each patch, and wherever the SPL meter, that stands for sound pressure level, it's measuring the dB, the volume of your patches, wherever it tells you it's at, match to that, not what your keyboard says, because the keyboard can say each patch is on 10 and they still sound radically different to the sound guy. But if you match it on the dB meter, the SPL meter, they'll be a whole lot closer. Same thing with guitars. Now with guitar players, what I always tell them is, give me your clean and your dirty sounds at the same level. Rarely are they the same level at sound check. I usually got to go and tell somebody, hey, turn up a lot of times the dirty is so distorted that it just compresses it and pulls it down. So you got to turn that output gain up to get them in the right place. If you're using a modeler, I know that can be a little bit challenging on the fly, especially if you're not super efficient with your modeler, or it's a new piece of equipment that you've only been using for a short period of time. So these are things you should do at home. But I also say, give me just a little bit of a boost, for your lead patch. So when you hit your lead patch, there's a little bit of a boost. Not this much of a boost, but a little bit of a boost. I always say 4 to 6 dB, depending on how sensitive your unit is, what kind of active passive pickups you're using, blah, blah, blah. There's all those variables that you already know about. Do your homework, do these things at home so you don't drive your sound guy bonkers while he's trying to run sound for your band. And these are things that we try to work out during sound check. If you're an acoustic player, make sure you have the resonant hole plug. I call it the hockey puck. The hockey puck in your guitar, specifically if you're using wedge monitors, because if you have an internal mic or something there, it will always try to feed back into that monitor. If you have the hockey puck, it solves that problem. It's the best $8 to $12 you will spend. Throw it in your guitar case or put it in your guitar and leave it there. Whatever you got to do to make that happen. And they make hockey pucks that's cut out for your volume thing that's inside the resonant hole. Okay, so they have figured that out for you. You're not going to be covering up your volume controls. What else? Just try to represent yourself as you really are to your sound guy during sound check. Be as loud as you're going to be during performance. Be as soft as you're going to be during performance. That way he has all the tools that he needs as he's trying to make you the best you can possibly be. Be on stage, be attentive, stand at your place on stage, be quiet, and wait for instruction. He will get to you. Be patient. If he's spending a couple extra minutes with the keyboard player or with the drummer because there's something wonky going on, don't get impatient and go disappear off stage. Stand in your position and wait for us to work it out. Because guess what? If we get to your instrument and your vocal and there's something wonky going on there, we're going to take the time to make that right as well. See how that works? You scratch my back, I scratch your back. We're all happy. The show goes off way better. We reduce the stress level. See, this is vitally important in my world because I want you as the artist to feel comfortable. I want you to feel free and feel like you're in a warm, welcoming, creative environment so that you can put on your best performance. But you have to help me and work with me, not against me, so that you can give me the resources that I need to create the framework that creativity is going to set in all night long. Only you have that power. Now, I get it. There's bad sound guys out there. There's jerk, egotistical, guys who think that they're way more than what they really are, who talk a big game, and know how to talk the language of production, but don't have the skill set to back it up. I know that is part of the equation. I'm not ignoring that, okay? But that goes the other way too. I also know jerk, musicians and bands who, use Pro Tools at home and automatically think that they're some kind of live sound engineer. I myself, as you know, am a live sound engineer, have been doing this for over 35 years. When I'm drumming in my band and working with another engineer, I follow their lead. Now, they may come to me and ask me my opinion about this, that, or the other. Most of the time, I'm coming to the table with a scene that's pretty close to where it needs to go, so they don't have to do too awful much. But I still submit to their authority because they're the ones that are out front, not me. You know, I don't try to be Johnny Know-It-All. I don't show up at the gig wanting to display my superior, intelligence for the whole room to see and make the sound guy feel like an idiot. And I know guys that do that, especially veteran guys that have been in the business a very long time and maybe have a very impressive resume. They get in bands sometimes and then they feel like it's their duty to somehow belittle the front of house guy by yelling frequency changes into monitors in a derogatory way. Look, there's a right way and a wrong way to say everything. Don't piss off the sound engineer. We all know that that's never going to go in a good direction. I know bands that I really enjoyed mixing who ended up hiring guys like that in their band, and I did one gig with them like that, and that's it. I never answered the phone from them again. Every time they asked me if I was available, I was not available anymore. Because I've been in this business way too long to put up with that kind of disrespectful bull butter. That's just not who I am. Go take your idealistic mixed philosophy someplace else, because all they want to do is draw attention to themselves so they can be deemed as the smartest sound engineer in the room. I have no desire to be the smartest sound engineer in the room. I just want to be the guy that's going to get the job done for your band. If it turns out that I'm that guy, I'll probably be the last guy to ever wield that power in a negative way. Unless you're a jerk. And if you're a jerk, I can be a jerk too. But then what does that solve? You're being a jerk, I'm being a jerk. Now there's tension and drama. Now you don't have that warm, welcoming, environment. If you're not happy, the audience many times picks up on that. I'm smart enough to know those things. That's why I try to be as easy to work with as I can. I have failed at that over the years, okay? There has been times where guys have pushed my buttons and I have just went ballistic. I think we all have a breaking point, and I think at the end of the day, we're all only going to get kicked so many times before we kick back. And I think if you push me to that point, because it takes a good bit to get me there, but once the train's moving down the tracks, it usually gets ugly pretty quick. This is how much of a professional I deem myself to be. Even after you piss me off, I still try to give you the best mix I can give you because my name is on the mix now. Especially in my home market where everyone knows me and there's a level of expectation that is present just when I walk in the room with my equipment. That's about me and my reputation. At that stage of the game, you can be a jerk all night long. I'm still going to try to give you the best I can give you. So people can at least walk away and say, hey, that guitar player might have been a jerk in that band, but they sounded pretty good. Their sound guy must really have it going on. I don't ever want to transfer that stress and that drama to the audience. I think that's an epic fail. And there's so many bands that miss that. They really, really do. There's so many sound guys that miss that. They really, really do. People can read your body language from across the room. And if there's challenges in the system, because sometimes the system is just not working for you. Sometimes it's like pumping Blue Johns for a living. No matter what you do, you're going to get some poop on you. Something is failing in the system. You're trying to troubleshoot it and figure it out. I'm sorry that all sound guys don't have a crystal ball to immediately within 5 seconds figure out what's going wrong in the system. It doesn't happen often, at least in my world, but when it does, I try to be as efficient about fixing those things on the fly as we can. I have never had to shut a show down in the middle of the show. I've never had to fold up shop after 2 sets and say we can't play the 3rd set. There's a catastrophic failure. I always have redundancy built into my systems so that the show can always go on. We may have to take a 5-minute break to get some things moved around, but we will get back on stage and we will finish the show. Not everybody's on that same page, okay? Not everyone has the financial depth to be able to have that level of redundancy in their systems and carry extra amplifiers and speakers and gobs of cabling that cost crazy amounts of money. Don't even get me started on the cost of copper these days. But, a good sound guy's built for murder. He's ready for that stuff. But a good sound guy can really really be your worst enemy if you're not nice to him. Okay? Can we just all be kind to each other and respect each other, specifically when there's challenges going on? I was recently mixing a band. I don't know. This was probably, man, probably goes back 6, 8 years or something like that. I was mixing a band. I call that recently. In my world, it feels recently, but um, yeah. And there was some challenges with tracks, you know. And the band was just starting, and I have run into this many times with bands that are just starting to use tracks. They don't understand that the tracks are all different kinds of levels sometimes. And when that happens, that is challenging. It's the same way with the guitar players and keyboard players when their levels are moving all around. Now you're chasing the track levels around, especially if you're giving me multiple tracks. Like there's a horn track, there's a keyboard track, backing vocal, maybe a guitar track in there or something like that. And the things that key the music are in the tracks. Well, if one song is way up here and the next song is way down here, I'm not only chasing it in front of house, I'm chasing it in your monitor mixes too when I'm mixing your monitors so that you can hear those track cues to know when to come in and sing. Especially if your drummer's on a click and that click level is moving up and down with the tracks as well. Now I'm just roughing in front of house and I'm on the monitor mix all night, because the tracks are all over the place. Well, in that challenging environment, we absolutely showed each other respect. We knew what the problem was. We identified it pretty quick. It was a new piece of equipment. The band was super cool at understanding that, hey, there's some growing pains here. We're trying to get this technology figured out. Budgets are getting tighter, so people are using tracks more and more because they can't afford to hire a horn section, or they can't afford to add a keyboard player, or they can't afford to add, a second guitar player or whatever, fill in the blank. So tracks is an economical way to be able to solve that problem without having to put 4 more people on stage. We're seeing it more and more. But you, as the guy running the band and controlling the tracks, have got to get that stuff leveled out so every song is the same level. So all the tracks inside your backing tracks are the same level, and they're not like all over the place, and we're chasing that around like we're trying to herd cats all night, because sometimes that's how it feels. The moral to the story in this specific instance was it was a very successful night, because you know what? No one freaked out. The band was super cool. I stayed chill about it and was like, we're just going to make the best of this. And I focused on trying to give them what they needed in their monitors so they didn't look like idiots on stage and miss their cues and things like that. That's really what was important, more than having a Super 6 front of house mix. It was give the band what they need so they can, stand up with some kind of integrity, because they're trusting you with their gifts, man. That I've always looked at it that way, because I'm a musician, and it's how it is when I'm on stage. I'm trusting the sound guy with all my rehearsal time, all the money I've spent in gear, all the things, man. I'm trusting him to take that and just put a nice little icing on that cake and reinforce it in a manner to where it makes sonic sense and is welcoming to the audience, because it's all about the audience experience. And so many times, especially in these small clubs when we're doing sound check with a room full of people, how we conduct ourselves during sound check is going to be reflected into the audience. If they see you arguing with the sound guy, they're either going to think you're a jerk, the sound guy's a jerk, or this whole venue is a joke, or, it creates tension in the room that doesn't need to be there. We have to be focused on the audience experience. And we have a responsibility as production people to be focused on that as well. It's not just the people on stage, but it's those of us that are off stage trying to make what they're doing on stage better. I hope that makes sense. I hope it's resonating with you guys and you're seeing where I'm getting with all that. Excuse me. I'm sure there's more things there that I'm missing because there usually is. You'll remind me of it in the comments. You always do. Hit me up in the comments, man. Tell me what, your nightmare sound check story. Tell me the things that I've missed that we should talk about in terms of trying to do a nice, organized, fluid sound check so that we all look like professionals. So when things get challenging, we still look like professionals and we're showing each other respect, even in a situation where it's not exactly the way any of us want it. Because I never like it, like in that instance with the band struggling with their tracks. I didn't like it any more than they did. Because again, my name is on the mix. I want it to be the best it can be. That way we all walk away from the gig feeling like, man, we really got it done tonight. We kicked some booty, took some names, the whole nine. You know what I'm saying? All the things. All of our music dreams came true. The beautiful thing about that situation with the band struggling with their tracks was at the end of the night, they were super happy, super appreciative, and they're a band who travels a lot and could really be using any sound company they want. And they chose to use me, and they really, really liked what I did. They really liked that I kept my cool and that we worked as a team, and that the final product was great. It was fine. They were a really, really good band, so I just needed to do a few little things that they needed some extra help on to help them be the band that they know they can be and that they're known to be, you know. That power was in my hands, you know, and I could have made that situation or broke that situation. I'm always trying to be a team member. I want to be part of what the band is trying to communicate. I'm really good and really quick about usually kind of catching the vibe they're trying to go for, and then that's the vibe I go with. And it's different for every band because I mix a classic rock band differently than I mix an R&B band, differently than I mix a country band, differently than I mix a bluegrass band for all the obvious reasons. Those are different vibes. Those are different musical, sonic, reference points, and they need to be handled with care and they need to be handled differently. So let's move on to part 2, which is speaking to event planners and promoters for, let's say, like street festival type stuff, or maybe gigs at your county fair that's multi-band kind of stuff, concerts in the park that are multi-band. We're really going to just talk about multi-band events. Let's say you got a cattle call gig where there's going to be 10 bands. Okay, as you're planning that event, the number one thing that you can do, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, you can do to make the changeovers go smooth is at least hire a backline company or ask your production company if they can provide a drum set and a bass guitar amp. If you can do those two things, not having to tear that drum set down after every band, pull all the mics off of it, tear the drums down, get them off stage, load the next drum set up, put all the mics back on the drums. Now these drums sound radically different than the last drum set, so now I have to recreate a whole new drum mix with that band. When you're sharing the same kit and the same bass amp all night or all day, I only have to mix the drums once. Each player will approach the instrument a little differently, but for the most part, the drums are going to sound, the kick's going to sound the same, the rack and floor toms are going to sound the same. Cymbals may change because a lot of times they bring their own cymbals and stuff. Same thing with the snare. Sometimes they'll bring their own snare. So yeah, we can work through that, but it's a whole lot more simplistic than what it is, but then tearing down a whole kit, setting up a whole nother kit. So there's one thing right there that'll make your sound guy happy and will make everybody much more satisfied with how the gig flows. The other thing is at least give 30 minutes as a break between bands. We always have canned music going, so when the band stops, we turn up that playback music and then we get to work at doing the band changeover. I usually have at least 1 or 2 guys at the stage that are doing band changeovers. My A2 and then a stagehand, and then I usually just stay at front of house so we can kind of manage things from a distance. But 30 minutes, I think, is a pretty standard time to have between bands. If we can get guys on in 25 minutes, we'll do that. We'll get ahead of schedule to a certain degree and give bands a little more flexibility and maybe playing an extra song or, something like that. If they can get started early, well, then they can do that encore song, and not mess the schedule up. That's the next thing. Write out and print out a schedule and hang it on the stage. Hang it where they come up onto the stage, hang it on each side of the stage, put one in the center of the stage that says this band plays from 1 to 1:45, this band plays from 2:15 to 3 o'clock, whatever your set times are, give 30 minutes between each band and post that so everyone can see it. Put it backstage, hang it on the walls backstage so everyone knows what's going on. hire someone, or if you're lucky enough to get someone who will volunteer, hire someone who understands these sort of things. They don't have to be someone like me with 35 years experience in the business. It could be someone who's just played in cover bands most of their life. Have them come out and help do this. Work with a guy like me. I will make this super easy for you if you just put a schedule together. My guys are all trained to kind of keep things moving. We have those conversations with bands like, look, here's our schedule. We're really, really, really trying to stay on schedule today. Can you please stay within your set time? We don't want to have to cut front of house on anybody. We want everyone to really have their time on stage and make the most of their time on stage. So our desire is to give you what you want. Just please respect the schedule enough and respect the band coming on after you. If you kind of sell it that way, that tends to put things in perspective for the bands. Like, don't forget there's a band coming on after you that wants to accomplish the same thing you want to accomplish on stage. Please respect them enough to get off stage when you're supposed to get off stage and get your gear out of the way. We usually take gear off one side of the stage and bring the next band's gear up on this side of the stage. If you're doing drums and bass back line, you're only talking about a couple guitar amps, maybe a keyboard every now and then, or an acoustic guitar every now and then. It makes changeover way, way easier, So, that's super huge, Have a backstage area, even if it's just a tent behind the stage, with a table and some chairs. Bands need a place to sit down, tune their instruments, and do all these things they need to do before they get on stage, because the last thing the sound guy wants to do is to stand there and wait for 5 minutes while everyone tunes their instruments. That's something they can be doing in the green room or backstage in that backstage tent. Put walls up on the tent so they can have some privacy, so they can talk. They can maybe drink a cold snack, a alcoholic beverage or something like that, a cold beverage before they go on stage, and just have that private moment. Plus, it also adds impact to them coming on stage, because they're just not people that everyone's been sitting there staring at for the last 45 minutes waiting to get on stage. Is actually a backstage area. Make sure that there's a bathroom back there, a porta-john that's dedicated to bands backstage. That goes a long way, so the band doesn't have to walk all the way out through the crowd to get to some porta-johns. Put a porta-john backstage just for the band and the production crew. It will stay a lot cleaner. Bands will respect you and love you for that. Make sure you got plenty of water, especially in the summertime. Plenty of water and Gatorade, things that can help people dehydrate or hydrate, not dehydrate, hydrate, so they can stay hydrated on these hot, 100-degree days. These bands get up, man, and they play in all kinds of weather, And then speaking of weather, that's the next thing I need to talk about. You have got, as a promoter or an event planner, submit to your production company lead. And in our scenario, that's me. And that means I'm the guy that says all this stuff plain as day in my contracts. I'm the guy who is going to decide what we do in terms of rain. When we're going to shut the show down, when we're going to start the show back up, all those kind of things. Wind is another thing. I own a mobile stage. If we are providing stage sound and lights for the event, or just stage and audio because it's a day event, you really don't need lights, I'm the guy that's going to make that decision. Don't get upset with the guy when he says we can't go on yet. Lightning protocol on all of our insurance policies say that we have to wait at least 30 to 45 minutes from the last lightning strike that we've seen or heard. Thunder can be included in this before we can fire everything back up and go, because lightning can strike as far away as like 10 miles, 15 miles, something like that. So we have to keep everyone safe. And that has ruffled people's feathers over the years, because some promoters are like, I'm losing the crowd. It hasn't been raining for the last hour, but we've had lightning strikes every 10 minutes for the last hour. And I got guys that are literally sitting with a stopwatch on their phone, and they're restarting that timer every time they see lightning or we hear thunder, and that sort of thing. If that ever goes south and someone gets injured because they were struck by lightning, or someone gets electrocuted on stage, when there's water pulling up in puddles on stage, and that happens because a lot of times the wind blows the water right in on stage, especially if you have a high roof, We have electrical cables laying everywhere on stage. I don't know if you realize this or not, but electricity and water do not go well together. And it's really easy for someone like a guitar player who's holding an electric instrument and putting his foot on an electric pedal board to get electrocuted. So we have squeegees on site. We're squeegeeing the stage. After the rain stops, we have a canvas roof. We're pushing water off the canvas roof, and things like that to try and make a safe environment. And we're trying to get all the water off. We got fans running to try to dry the floor out or whatever. We will genuinely do everything in our power to get the band back up and going as soon as possible. But I have had guys stand there and yell and scream at me because I wouldn't put a band back on stage. And here's why. If something goes wrong, and I started to say this a minute ago, if something goes wrong and we got to go to court for this, that same promoter who was standing there screaming and yelling for me to put bands back on stage is going to be the same guy who stands in court and says, his contract says he's the expert and he makes these calls. Yeah, I asked him to put bands back on stage. I even screamed at him and told him to put bands back on stage. But per his contract, he's the only one that can make that decision. He could have told me no. And then guess who's liable now for the death or the injury or whatever happens? It's going to be me. It's going to be the production company lead. It's going to be the production company's insurance company that's going to have to come to bat for that. And I'm here to tell you right now, if you've ever filed a liability claim with an insurance company, you better know that you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed and all the things, dude, because they are going to go through that situation with a fine-tooth comb. If they find any level of neglect, they're not going to pay for anything, and now you just lost your production company. It can happen. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And that's a worst case scenario. In this business, you have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It's the only way that we can keep our head above water and we can keep people safe. Let me say it again. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. The problem is so many of these events are run by Karens and Chads who think they know how to do your job better than you, and they want to tell you, how to make these decisions. That's where the conflict happens. I lost a client, man, I don't know, 6-8 years ago or whatever, that was hiring me to do, I don't know, it was like 4, 5, 6 big summer events in their community, because the girl that ran the concerts would just bark orders at me constantly that she wants me to set up in mud. She thought that I was being way hard to work with because I had concerns about where we were setting up at, because it had been raining for 3 days. Now the sun was out today, but it's been raining for 3 days. And we're in a neighborhood where the dirt work that is done in this planned community, everything has been moved. It's not like out here in West Virginia where most of the ground has been sitting there where it's at for millions of years. No, when you get close to the cities, they dig everything up and rearrange the whole landscape to plan these communities out, which means when you get saturated rain, it softens that ground up a lot quicker. And we kind of butted heads on, some of that. And it's like, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm trying to not create a situation where we're stuck in the mud. And now my contracts, after that, I added this to my contracts where if there's some kind of questionable stuff on site, they are responsible for any kind of tow bill, for any kind of cleanup. Like if my stage gets trashed with mud and all that kind of stuff, and it's more than what I can just hose off up here at the shop or something, they're going to pay to have that thing pressure washed. And I mean, if you're going to park me in the mud, that's what it's going to be. Or if we're looking at the radar and we're starting to see lightning, now guess what? It's time to shut down. They don't understand that when it's not raining. And it's like, it's lightning protocol. We have to follow these rules. Otherwise, if something happens, we have no coverage. So there's a social dynamic that's involved with that is sometimes very hard to navigate. The situation I was just talking about, they didn't call us back the next year. And I know that's why. And I've come to a place in my business where I'm busy enough where I don't have to do business with people like that. You know, let somebody else, let one of my competitors go deal with it. There was 2 other companies that were salivating for that work anyways. Let them go fight the Karens and Chads. Let them go risk their liability insurance and their livelihood and everything that they've spent, 3 decades of their life building to just make a Karen happy, who again will stand in court and say, oh, well, he was the expert. He was the one that made the final call, not me. Yeah, sure, I was asking for it, but what do I know? Look at his contract. It says he's the expert. He's the guy that makes these calls. You got to stand firm on that when you're on the job. If you're an event promoter or you're someone that puts these kind of festivals together, take note of that and submit to your production guy. He's only looking out for your well-being. He just doesn't want to see someone get hurt. Plus, do your people really want to set out in the rain while the band's playing? No, that's not going to. As soon as it starts raining, everybody leaves or they go running for a tent somewhere 200 yards away or something. I mean, it's. So then the band's just up there playing to mud, like there's nothing going on, So this is just silly for us to try and move forward that way. The last thing that I'll say, and then I'll let you guys go, about these festivals, these day festivals, and I'm talking like food truck festivals, beer festivals, wine festivals, all that kind of stuff. I did a taco, beer, and tequila festival one time that was super interesting, especially in the mornings when you showed up and you realized that, tacos and tequila don't really go together that well on the stomach, if you know what I mean. They were hosing down the parking lot from people having lost their guts the night before. That was super gross and horrible. Thankfully, it was nowhere near our stuff, so we didn't have much of it to deal with. But that's the type of shows that we're talking about here. Middle market, middle of the road. Maybe it's happening in your city park. Maybe it's happening at your fairgrounds, during off-fair week. Like a lot of people will rent those venues to do concerts when the fair is not happening. You are the people that I'm talking to. You are the people that can put these things in place and really make things work in a manner to where the bands are happy, the production company's happy, and if you can make those 2 people happy, I will guarantee you your audience will be happy. And your audience will talk about and rave about your event for years to come. They'll go home saying, I can't wait to go back to that next year. Because it was so organized and it just flowed so well. All the bands seemed like they were on cloud 9. And you know what? Bands, it's your responsibility to be that way regardless of what's happening. You're not supposed to transfer that stress to the audience. But we all know that that's challenging. That's why I make these kind of videos. That way you can address these things and we can all be working together as a team, band, production company, and event promoter, and make these things everything that they can be and make them events that people want to come out to and support, because we all know that people don't come out quite as much as they used to. So when we do put these events together, we need to make sure we got all our ducks in a row. You know what I'm saying? Listen, if you're still here, like hanging out, listening to me ramble on, you should probably be a grumpy insider. You just should. I think we're like, 50 minutes or 48 minutes or something into this video. If you're still here, you've been here long enough, you should really consider becoming a grumpy insider. There should be a join tab on my YouTube channel here that you can hit, and you can become a paid subscriber to the channel. You can be a free subscriber too. Like 87% of you guys are not subscribed that's watching right now. There's no excuse for that. You can subscribe for free and just follow the channel. Enjoy these Wednesday, videos. There's like 840 some videos on this channel. Tons and tons of educational, stuff here, fun stuff, ranting about Karens and Chads and all the things, are here on this channel. But on the paid side, then you get to go sit at the table with all the cool kids. Then you get to be part of a community of production people who literally bring decades upon decades upon decades of experience to the table. And we have a lot of conversation about gear, reviewing gear, talking about real world experiences with different gear. We show pictures every week of the gigs that we did that previous weekend. On Mondays, we put out stuff like that. I just want to see what's going on. Plus, you get to talk to me one-on-one. We get to chew the fat. We can tell war stories. We can do all the things that you want to do for about the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. for a third of the price of what you pay for a value meal at McDonald's these days, you can be a grumpy insider. You know, it's like $5 a month or something, you know. So get in there, hit that join link, get over there at the cool kids table, and let's chew the fat and let iron sharpen iron in that environment. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.